Welcome back to AudioLife Memoirs, the podcast where we tell your story in your voice. Today, we have a special show planned for you as we do our year in review. I'm Carrie Purcell, one of the founders here at AudioLife, and today I'm joined in the studio by my founding partners, Ghafoor Masood and Joe Marckx, as we discuss some of our favorite moments from the podcast throughout 2024. I hope you'll enjoy all the memories ahead, the clips, the guests that we talk about, and Ghafoor, Joe, welcome back to the studio.
Hey guys.
All right, yeah, good to be back in the studio. Good to see y'all.
So today we're recording on December 18th, 2024. We're going to take the next hour or so to reflect on some highlights that we've had throughout the year. And I want to just start by going through our own memories a little bit. So Ghafoor, it's been a while since we recorded together. We've had a lot of fun in the studio. Thinking back over the last year, what was your favorite show from the year?
That's a very easy question for me. You maybe can already guess it, Carrie, but my favorite episode was easily Derek Martin. So I love the unknown and the mysteries of the universe. And I mean, that guy was just dropping bomb after bomb. I mean, I didn't know where my head was at. I was having an existential crisis after that episode. You guys know me. I'm a little bit practical, maybe a little bit cynical about the supernatural and all of that stuff, but I am open to possibilities. And especially when it comes from a voice of authenticity. And I really felt Derek was sharing what was occurring to him as his truth or his reality. If I had to pick a favorite story from that, was probably his C5 Encounters, I believe it was called, with Dr. Stephen Greer.
And we're sitting there, we've seen some lights doing curious things. It's pitch black. It's like 2:00 in the morning. There's not even any roads or lights or anything anywhere. And just for like a split second, I thought I saw the silhouette of a balcony with a silhouette of a person on the balcony about 12 feet off the ground. And it was so fast. I was like, nah, that had to be like somebody's flashlight hitting a cactus, causing a shaft. Like, your brain just goes, that's nothing. Like when you hear a creak in your house at night, you're like, you don't even think about it. 2 seconds later, this lady, 2 people down in the circle from me, just says, hey, I think we're inside like a partially materialized UFO right now because I see a balcony with a bunch of beings on it staring down at us.
And I mean, I don't even know what he was saying, but it was like he was in a spaceship at one point and it was like interdimensional. And I mean, every single story that episode was wild. I mean, he was going into werewolves, Bigfoot.
So another night I was laying in my bed and there was literally a wolf right at my window looking at me, like showing its teeth and growling. It was scary AF. And I was just like, no. So I like jumped out of bed and grabbed the blind and pulled the blind down.
I mean, I could pick easily any of them, but I think that was definitely my favorite show. It was very exciting. It left me with more questions than answers. And I thought he was a terrific guy as well. So easy question for me, Carrie.
Yeah, awesome memories. That was a crazy one. Yeah, I mean, in a good way, a very good way. He's such a good guy, but boy, those stories just make you think about what's out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of part of the fun, right? Is just to get the wheels turning and have your mind opened up through someone else's experiences and, relating them in a way where it's like, wow, this is pretty vivid and making something that, is essentially like a supernatural kind of thing, like making it palpable,
Yeah.
So yeah, Derek was definitely entertaining.
Yeah. So Joe, who else stands out to you? What was your favorite show?
Well, I'm not even sure we've actually officially published it, but our most recent interview with Tony Roy.
Yes.
Carrie, you did the interview. I obviously got a sneak peek behind the scenes with the unedited files. And, one of our more lengthy conversations, I couldn't stop listening once I got in this, the file and listened to that over 2 hour interview. Not so much. I mean, the story obviously is like, real life Top Gun. I mean, it's a position that very few people could ever put themselves in.
To find that other aircraft as I turned back to the south and get myself out of this problem. And I remember feeling the impact and the plane immediately starting to turn it a way that was very uncomfortable, which was I was on the left-hand turn. Jeremy hits about like this, rips the whole aft end of the airplane off and the left wing. And the plane starts to tumble negative G's this way, which is an incredibly uncomfortable and disorienting experience. I'm used to G's going down through your body. G's coming up this way causes all kinds of physiological problems.
Yeah.
I no longer have any control. This plane, it's time to get out. Like the decision was made in a microsecond. I never doubted it for a second that like, this is bad. This is real bad.
And you know, Tony, right, full disclosure, is a friend of mine, and I knew he had been involved in this plane crash, and I knew, you know, a few of the details he had shared with me, but really the depth that he reveals, the nuances of everything that happened, he's able to describe to a layperson, a civilian like myself that's never flown a plane of any sort, let alone, you know, a fighter jet, to really kind of put you in the cockpit with him and takes you through, you know, not only, you know, the actual instant of the crash, but just really like the aftermath of that, right? And that's where really just the whole story unfolds, and what happens, you know, after a plane crash that involves loss of life and, you know, the instinct, the survival instincts that kick in, the adrenaline, you know, the emotion, the anger, the fear, and then just how he, you know, has to process that, and how he relates it to, you know, other things that as humans we have to process, right? With, you know, each of us has probably had some mild form of PTSD. You know, how he relates it to, really, it's no different than being involved in a car accident, right? Or other situations that might be more familiar to the listener. So, but, you know, it was fun to kind of hear, you know, get more context and really just the arc of his career and what led up to that incident. So I just appreciated Tony coming in our studio and giving us really a detailed tale of you know, what was essentially the most important thing that happened to him in his life.
Yeah, it was absolutely an incredible story. And you're right, it probably won't release before this episode, although our audio engineer, will get a clip in here for everybody to hear. But it is absolutely worth listening to. An incredible experience. And as you well said, Joe, it starts as a movie, but it ends as a relatable person that, you know, takes this crazy experience that the vast majority of us have never come anywhere close to experiencing, and relates it to a car crash or something that many of us have been through to help relate the learnings and the experiences. But he's an incredible storyteller, and the 2 hours we definitely could have talked longer. But you know, when you get to an impactful moment like that, there's no more you can say. At least in that sitting. Yeah.
But it's real, it's raw, he's authentic, right? It's cool that, you know, he's willing to put himself into this forum and tell the story, because it's while most people don't have that career path, he's very relatable and down to earth, and you know, and tells the story well.
I get to host a lot of these conversations, and I do get to have incredible conversations. So I've interviewed probably at this point at least 5 authors where I got to read their memoir and then actually talk to them. I've talked to CEOs. I've talked to, you know, the real life Top Gun in my. He says it may not be true. I think it probably is based on him. Just incredible people, but. When we first talked about this conversation and this question, I didn't debate, you know, out of all these amazing conversations, there was just one conversation that came to mind, one person that popped in, and I was like, that's who I'm going to talk about. And it's it's going back. Her name is Patricia Miller, and she really stood out. So she actually, the story behind the scenes, you will be able to go back and listen to her podcast, but she actually she was a private client. So her daughter-in-law and her son got her an AudioLife memoir package because she's one of those amazing storytellers in their life, in their world, right? She's not somebody that has a book published, at least not yet. She's not somebody who has run a company. But I was so moved by her story that we actually went and asked permission to put it on our public podcast, which, some of these conversations are private and they're just for your family. But somebody like Patricia, I think it's a bit of a thrill to be able to just put her story out there. She is a Southern mother and wife, and this woman is just full of wisdom. I can't do it justice in my little reminiscing here, but I will point out a few things. And one was that she talked about wealth, but she talked about the wealth of family love being so much greater than monetary wealth. And it was really vivid the way she talked about it. She's very inspirational.
They can see they came from wonderful grandparents and wonderful great-grandparents, my kids. You'd like to know about your ancestry, and I want them to know they came from a long line of good people. Nobody was ever rich, but we knew how to laugh and sing and love each other.
And, I recommend going back and listening to her. Just such a true, real person full of wisdom. Once I started thinking about her, there was another story that popped up. And like Joe, I guess I went to a story that we haven't shared publicly yet. I also haven't asked permission to share it publicly yet. So we'll see if we get a clip into this episode or not. But it was another incredible mother. Her name is Susan. I won't give you her last name until she lets us. And it's a private podcast as well. So this was one that we heard that her son-in-law was looking for a special Mother's Day gift. And she's somebody who's particularly hard to buy for. We all know those people, but as her story unfolds, you realize she really is hard to buy for. I'll tell you a little bit about why. So she shares this beautiful story of motherhood, and part of what makes it so special is actually co-parenting with her ex-husband. And she describes how they actually created this really true blended family and also friendship. So one of the stories she shares is how she was going to redecorate her daughter's room at her father's house. Her father has now remarried. They have a couple of sons together. So her daughter has brothers, or half brothers, but brothers. So she decorates her daughter's room at her dad's house, and the brothers start to complain, "Oh, why can't we have our room decorated?" So of course, they're her daughter's brothers. She goes and decorates their room. And then she has a look at her ex-husband's room with his new wife. And she says, I could decorate your room for you if you'd like to. And they gave her a budget, and they gave her no rules. And she went in and made them a beautiful bedroom. And I mean, it was just the beginning of this wonderful family that went on vacation together, that supported each other. It's just a really cool example that, that I hadn't heard of that version of really co-parenting together so successfully. She was also an avid baker for years. She was that person that brought in the birthday treats for absolutely every colleague in the office. She had a room dedicated in her house that was the chocolate room, which her grandchildren later, learned to love. And today she lives with ALS. So she is physically limited. She's in a wheelchair. She's not able to bake anymore. She says on her podcast, as long as she's able to talk and eat, she's happy to continue living, and she has the most amazing outlook. But her life looks different. She's only been able to see the main floor of her daughter's house, and that was with a whole lot of effort on the family's side to get ramps to get her in the house. She talks about isolation during COVID. She talks about how her family broke the rules just so they could have a couple of dinners together. And, without recapping her entire podcast, her son-in-law gave us some feedback, and he said he's never been a good gift giver. And he said this one was so successful that it's bought him at least a couple of years. And once they got the final published podcast, the whole family got together and did a listening party. And he said they actually listened to it twice. They laughed, they cried. And I won't lie, after he told me that, I went back and listened to it again and shared it with my husband and laughed and cried. And it was just really a beautiful story. So those ones touched me, and I just wanted to share those.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, nice, Carrie. I also Patricia Miller was a solid runner up for me. I really appreciated her wit, her wisdom, her demeanor, and just the perspective that she provided. I think her experience is probably not unlike a lot of people in this country of her generation, but she told it so well and so sweetly. And it's not really that typical, American dream of like rags to riches, but you get a really good sense of her childhood, and not so much that that it was poverty, right? But it was just like, yeah, we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't get new carpet every few years, whatever, right? There was a lot of things were worn in, but that sense of the greater family and the generations and the love and connection they shared. But as she went from childhood into young adulthood, her willingness to go get that job and get a paycheck and save money and chart her own course in life, and while progressing into adulthood, right, like maintaining those values she was raised on. And where, sure, we all want to be comfortable, and good finances are not a bad thing, but really just the focus always being on love in the household, and not so much financial abundance. So I really appreciated her story as well, and just her her sweet voice, right, and just the way she tells it, again, just so genuine, so nice.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important to note, because we've had family members on here. I've had my mother, I've had an aunt, I've had an uncle. There are people that, of course, are extremely meaningful. They're probably the reason that we do this. So we don't want to negate any of the amazing stories we've had, but there's some really, really special moments and lessons that I think we've learned along the way, and that's part of what stands out. And I think that should be the next thing that we share, if there is a lesson that you've learned or some advice that's kind of stood out. And maybe we'll go back to Ghafoor for this one.
Wow, that's a deep question. There's so many unique perspectives. I tend to be a person who sometimes thinks he's got a good grasp of how things are and so on, but it's unbelievably humbling when you hear a guest come on and it pretty much reduces you to tears. And the one that sticks out for me is a lesson shared or advice given rather than a specific piece. It's more how they transmuted their pain for a cause, that was much bigger than themselves, and that was Corolla.
In the end, I believe we are all originals to the land. We are different tribes, different cultures. We are the same. Once we understand that and we stop looking at colors or race or where you're from or what's your title, it's when humanity will be able to reach unity, and start living from the heart and guiding one another with love.
That's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Her story, I remember, reviewing the podcast. I wasn't fortunate enough to be on that one, but I remember reviewing it and just thinking to myself, like, filled with, sadness, but also gratitude at the fact that people like her exist. I mean, the personal hardship she went through with her childhood experience in Honduras, the discrimination, personal challenges, abuse, all of that. And to come out of that, overcoming adversity, I mean, how can you not be inspired from something like that? She's just a legend in my eyes. And then to follow her personal growth journey and self-discovery, I mean, literally for days after, I was just filled with immense gratitude and just like thinking about all the people who, it's very easy to get wrapped up in your own world and, I've got these problems and nobody else understands. And it's a connecting thing with AudioLife when you hear what some people have been through, but also how they transmute that. I mean, she was a great mother, she's an advocate for women and children in Honduras. She's an entrepreneur. So, I mean, as an overall life lesson about resiliency and the ability to overcome adversity, I think that's the one that sticks out for me. And then small shout out, you talk about family members being on here. I felt like Joe's father.
Treat your family and your friends. Have faith. It's easy to assume you're going to be successful, and you should always believe and be confident that you're going to be successful. But you should also be willing to do the hard work.
John Marckx, that's another guy, with a can-do attitude. And I think that kind of stuff really sticks out for me. You could call these kind of old school himself and Mike Diamond, but...
And always be nice, because you haven't a freaking clue what kind of life even people that work close to you are living at home. You have no idea what shit show they may be going through on a daily basis. So be nice. And the last thing I would think was, as a bottom line, what we all have is our word. And if you give your word, keep your word.
I just, as a male role model looking up, and I always try to take wisdom from my elders, and I felt like a little boy when I was interviewing both of those, but in a good way. They just had full of wholesome advice throughout, about how, hard work and getting at things that maybe that you don't fully understand, but you take accountability and responsibility. And I really got that sense from Joe's father. So special shout out for that one as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. You kind of stole my thunder there. I was going to point to my dad.
Joe should get his dad.
Yeah.
That one's his.
No, I mean, Ghafoor did the interview, so it's all fair. He was able to draw those insights and that story and have that conversation with him as our service is designed. We just celebrated my dad's 90th birthday here last week. And so I had a chance to kind of reflect on, the lessons that I've garnered, the wisdom I've garnered, the example I've had from my dad throughout my life, and, have fun with giving a little speech at his celebration with close friends and family. Before you hit the nail on the head with kind of one of the main takeaways I think my dad would want from that conversation, from that interview, is just that, hard work's okay. It's okay to grind it out daily, but stay optimistic, right? Like, stay optimistic and just put in the work. So, I'm glad you were able to draw that similar insight, that wisdom out of that conversation that you conducted. But it's fun when you get to have family members, right, interviewed. And I think part of why we encourage people to go through this process is because even when you think you know someone, there's always that aha moment of like, I didn't know that. Like, that's so cool. Like,
yes.
And it might not necessarily be like, some hidden secret, but just, there's details from people's long lives and, right. In the case of my father, like, obviously I wasn't around when he was a little boy, and there's little stories or tidbits that came out with maybe his interactions with his siblings or family dynamics or just things that happened to him as a young person that I just didn't know. It never come up in conversation. So I think that, my brother was interviewed, my mother, but just that discovery that happens with an AudioLife memoir, I think is one layer of the process or the experience that, it should not be understated that there's really that element of surprise that comes out with pretty much, I think, every episode. I think there's a listener that's like, oh, cool, I just learned something new.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that with my mom's. And, my mom is the kind of person who has told all of her stories over and over. And so I had heard the stories on her podcast, but what I hadn't heard was like what happened after, right? She told a story about a house fire, and we'd always heard about the house fire, but that story always ended with the amazing jump out of the third floor window and getting caught by their uncle and, everybody surviving. But we never heard about like the 6 months later of rebuilding and being separated, like, between family and neighbors, and not like all of that stuff that you might choose not to share is the story that you're telling your kids. And there was so much learning for me in that, and empathy, and there's just a lot under there and there's so many of these. That's just one little, that was the first time that it happened for me with my mother. And I was like, well, you didn't tell us that part, but you told us that a million times. And we never asked, right? I mean, probably we didn't ask. This has popped up for me several times. So if you ask me what lesson I've learned, I hear this in so many of our podcasts, and so I have to share this one. We've talked about stories that were painful, that were overcoming tragedy. We've talked about stories of extreme success, and so many of them have told me in their own words the same sentiment, and it's that they wouldn't change a thing. They wouldn't change anything that happened in their life.
If you had the opportunity to make it so that this accident never happened, would you? And it absolutely rocked my world, because I had spent 12 years thinking that this is the worst thing that had ever happened in my life. And he asked me, and I thought about it, and I was stunned, because it's also changed my life and changed who I am and changed what my priorities are and changed everything about how I view the world and other people and family and commitment and responsibility and, all these things. It's changed all of it. And so my response, my buddy was killed and he left his son without a dad. So of course I would change it. But for what I have learned and for what it has meant to me and to my family and to my life, I would not change it.
And it stands out to me every single time. I've come to expect it. But again, we've had some of the most difficult stories that we've shared.
There are people in my life that I might forget sometimes that they're important to me, but they are.
Yeah.
And, this book is about those relationships, even the ones that seem like they were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
They were important. They defined me. They made me. Any of that happening, I would not be me. This may sound insane, especially if you've read the book, but, I'm not sorry that any of that happened. Because, I'm, pretty happy that I'm me.
It's one of those things where as much as you wish that, you just couldn't. Like, you can't be ready before you're ready. As much as we can look from our perspective now and say, I wish I could have done that differently, we just aren't ready until we're ready. All the things need to be in place. You have to have enough sense of self, enough courage, enough perspective, and, or enough experience, whatever it is that culminates in you finally being able to kind of break free from whatever it is you've been tied to or stuck to.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that I don't have grief over it, and looking back say, oh, I wish this or I wish that. But we have to always remember that we're coming from our point of view now, having known things.
Yeah.
And those previous versions of ourselves just didn't know.
And we've had some really successful ones, and to hear it over and over. I knew going into this podcast, I wanted to point out that people keep on sharing that life lesson. And yesterday, coincidentally, I heard a quote from Charles Dickens from Great Expectations that I just want to share. And it says, "That was a memorable day to me, for it made great changes in me. But it's the same with any life. Imagine one selected day struck out of it, and think how different its course would have been. Pause as you read this and think for a moment that long chain of iron and gold, of thorns or flowers that would never have bound you, but for the formation of the first link on one memorable day." And it's just that idea that any change will change who you are, and that, you know, every single one of these people, no matter what they've been through, has accepted that that they are who they are because of what they've been through that's made them. It just really stood out to me. There's one more I have to share from Mike Diamond, who is my uncle, and I may not get this quote just right, but it's something like,
and always be nice, because you haven't a freaking clue what kind of life even people that work close to you are living at home. You have no idea what shit show they may be going through on a daily basis. So be nice.
I mean, that one, he has great advice, but you're just like, yeah, man, like, you just don't know. You don't know what people are going through. And I've referenced C a couple of times. C Maximo is our amazing audio engineer, and I sent her these questions too, because when I thought about this process, I thought there's nobody who knows these podcasts better than me, except for C.
Yeah.
And I want to share the answers that she sent me. We didn't make her record, but she did write. I asked her, what was your favorite show? What was a lesson? I asked her what she was excited for, and I'll share those. And just a disclaimer, there was no coordination between any of these answers, so you are going to hear a couple of repeats here. It wasn't planned. So C wrote to me when I asked what her favorite show of the year was. She said she especially loved the Patricia Miller episode. Patricia's colorful childhood, practical take on optimism, and her heart for caring for others really stood out. C's favorite part was at 1516, because she's an audio engineer. She'll put it in for you. I don't know what she's talking about yet. But she says that Patricia shared a ghost story. And what could have been a moment of horror turned into something unexpectedly adorable and pure, thanks to the innocent curiosity she had as a child. It made C miss being a kid, which I thought was really lovely.
Yeah.
When I was little, we'd sleep in this one room, which the little cemetery thing was right in front of it. We'd go to bed, and I'd say, Betty, what's all that scratching noise I hear? And she'd say, oh, don't worry, that's the rats between the walls. I'd say, oh, okay. And then she'd tell me, now, if you stay up late enough, you'll see those people out there crawl out of their graves and come up over the tombstone. And oh, how I'd try to stay up late. I'd try. And every morning I'd wake up and she'd say, did you see him? And I'd say, no, I fell asleep.
I also asked her her favorite lesson, and she pulled out Corolla's story. She said Corolla's story of healing and turning her pain into a cause bigger than herself was truly inspiring, especially as her episode walks you through personal hardships that could break even the strongest of us. C says she became an instant icon in my book, and yes, I cried throughout the entire editing process. Something she had not shared before, but how could you not? So I'm going to ask you this, but I asked C first, what are you excited about in the coming year in 2025? She said, what I love about working at AudioLife the most is the episodes, how they constantly challenge and refine my perspective on life and personal growth. It's a humbling experience that keeps me grounded. And what excites me most is knowing that AudioLife will only continue to grow in 2025. Hopefully, with more stories shared, more listeners gained, and the incredible opportunity to see the world through a fresh set of eyes or ears, depending on how you enjoy your podcasts. As you can tell, she's pretty amazing. We're so lucky to work with her. But guys, what are you excited about in 2025 for AudioLife?
For me, it has to be the unknown and the diversity of guests, because I've been exposed to so many podcasts that I normally wouldn't listen to. I'm like, what? That doesn't really sound like right up my street. And those are usually the ones that I end up enjoying the most, bizarrely, whether it's in the review process or whether I'm in there. And you really get connected with the fact that people are emotional human beings. And when a good story is told, it transcends culture, gender, region, geography, religion, all of that just absolutely fades. And so for myself, I'm excited about the personal journey of discovery with the diversity of guests. And I know Joe but Carrie in particular really brings a selection of guests that I have no exposure to in my normal mediums that I listen to. And that's the thing I'm most excited about in 2025. Like, who's going to come next, and what humbling experience are they going to reveal to me?
Right on. 2025 is going to be a big year. I think that, what we're doing is important work, and just looking forward to continuing our efforts to connect with different communities and allow people the opportunity in really in a fun experience to create their memoir, create their legacy. And while it might not, immediately be cherished and valued by everyone, eventually, right, what we're doing is creating this archive of diverse voices and unique stories, and allowing them to be shared and preserve that voice, right, which we know is at the heart of our service. And so really just as I, network in my personal life and get to know people, they're just like, oh, that's amazing. Like, could you help me with this? Or, I'm part of this community, and we really want to tell our story. And so I think, there's just some different opportunities that we can tap into with our expertise, with the hard work we've put in to develop, this product, this system, this process to easily capture compelling stories and make them easily shareable and enjoyed. So, there's tons of potential for AudioLife, but based on what we've accomplished in this last year, I'm very confident that we're on the right track, and this next year will be very fundamental in, and just kind of exposing the world to the service that we've collectively created as co-founders.
Yeah, amazing, Joe. And I know on the business side, there is so much happening where we're reaching new audiences, where we're going to have very cool series and documentaries and community building, which I won't dig into. That's to come,
Right.
but we're working hard on it. When I thought about this answer, I kept it simple and to the core of what started this. There's so many ways you could answer it. I just took the first one that came to my mind, and it was my family. So recently I've been working on a podcast structure for siblings, which isn't where we started, right? We were trying to capture those stories of parents, grandparents, the stories that at least for me, that I was afraid of losing, that we knew we'd learn from. We've had so many stories shared over the past year. And then I came across some ideas and some questions and built out one to have with each of my siblings. So I'm going to do a siblings podcast. I'm not promising they'll be public. Let's see how they go, but we're going to test it out. And then just continuing, I have a whole half of my family's on the East Coast. So my East Coast family, I just want to capture more of their stories. And so that got me excited for next year. It's just building that sort of family legacy out and making sure that we capture all of that. And with the siblings, I think it's just really cool to have those conversations at all these different stages in our lives, right? Not just, we talk about this as legacy, and it is, but our medium allows us to continue revisiting those conversations at many points, rather than just that big culmination of your life story and that's it and it's over, right? It's not. We're going to keep learning and listening, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, as we like to say, right, it's never too early to record your story. And so, I've been in the studio with you, Carrie, to record my story as a, middle-aged dad / entrepreneur / husband, brother, son. And, I'm relieved that I got to record that first installment. And, I have a 7-year-old son now, and just being able to know that, hey, I got to reflect, on what it is to be a dad, and what some of my childhood experiences are, kind of that sync up right with where he's at in life. And so, I look forward to, as the years go by here, coming up to, recording another session, because I'm sure there'll be other stories, insights, reflections that could be memorialized, right, and archived here. And so, yeah, it's okay, right? It's not a one and done type of proposition. And so, hey, all you listeners out there, it's never too early. Go ahead and record your story.
I mean, honestly, like another one of those themes that comes out over and over is people saying, I feel like I could have this conversation with you every week, right? Like people just, or I've heard this more than once, that through the process, they've remembered memories that for them were gone, right? They were so far buried that they weren't going to. And so it was that experience of kind of bringing up those memories. And I have to tell you, the older I get, I know I know that feeling. like I don't really remember that anymore. So there is a whole process. Again, like really excited about all of the things that we've done, where we're going. I want to know what we should be doing more of, and I want to hear it broadly. I want to hear it from you guys. I did ask C, so I'm going to share her answers. I want everybody who's listening to also share with us. So we are going to ask you for your feedback. We're going to ask you to write in, email us. We're going to ask you to, answer these questions on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you want to find us. But I'll share C's answer. I don't want to, but I will. So she says she wants to hear more stories from the founders. She said learning about Carrie, Ghafoor, Joe, their motivations and their journey in developing AudioLife will really give listeners a glimpse into where AudioLife's heart is at. It'll be interesting to hear their experiences as AudioLife grows. Also, I can't forget how Carrie's episode ended with a teaser for part 2. Definitely something to look forward to. We have not recorded part 2, just to be clear. But yes, there's so much that we didn't get into the first episode because these are our lives. There's a lot there to share. So what do you guys think? What should we do more of? Who should we get on the show? Who should we invite to get in touch with us? What do you want to hear?
Well, I mean, to piggyback from that, in case our listeners can't see, I'm doing a heart symbol right now. I love that. I love C's comment about wanting to learn more about the founders and the founders being the heart of where it's all. And I just want to go back to one of our first episodes. I had the privilege of, interviewing Carrie, our CEO at AudioLife. And I work with her every day. We talk a lot. But what I gleaned from that episode, you don't ask these questions when we're talking to each other. And Joe tells me loads of things. We phone each other, we chat. The same with me and Carrie. We have a lot of shared interests, but there's something that's really revealed from the questions that we're asking on these series and these shows. And I was left unbelievably frustrated, like the worst cliffhanger ever at the end of Carrie's episode, because I felt like we were only really scratching the surface. And we said, okay, we're running out of time. It's our, and so I have to echo C's comment. I'd love to see a part 2, and the same goes for Joe, and same goes for many of our guests. I feel like when you get to know them better, there's a deeper line of story and question there that we don't just quite get to, and I'm really excited about see how that comes. I have a million other ideas as well, but I'd love to hear what our audience thinks. But I like the idea of maybe having multiple guests on for a kind of a real kind of mix-up. I think that would be really cool, especially because we've got such a diverse range of opinions and stories, and I'd love to see that all in a melting pot. But yeah, that's what I'd like to see us do more of.
So multiple guests, you want like family members, like kind of like a reveal all?
Yeah.
That would be, so maybe with my family, it might be very dangerous to do that, to bring us all together. I come from a large family of 6 siblings, 7 children all together. So that would be wild. It would be like herding cats to get us all in the studio at the same time. But honestly, that would be one for the ages. You know what? Let me try and put that in my diary.
Okay.
I could get that going next year. Even if I could get 5 or 6 of them, would be hilarious. So, that's an interesting one.
Well, and since you guys, there's some disparity in age there, right? So the same events are going to have a variety of perspectives, and of course there's going to be some overlap and commonality to your experience childhood experience, there would definitely be some divergent opinions on things. So yeah, that could definitely be entertaining with such a large family, and inevitably the different personalities at play. So yeah, Ghafoor, if you can do that, I'll pop some popcorn and get ready if you can arrange that with your family. But for me, as you guys know, during this process of founding AudioLife with you guys, I relocated from my birthplace of Southern California to New Orleans. And while, hey, I didn't move abroad, I'm not in some exotic location, the experience of living in New Orleans is quite different for me. And as you know, I enjoy it and love my new adopted hometown. But as I live here, right, had visited as a tourist many times and enjoyed, little glimpses of the culture and enjoying, the fun that New Orleans offers. But I would love to, kind of record and archive some of the different segments of the culture and the history and the people that have made this vibrant city what it is. There's so much going on. It's really an incredible history from going back, hundreds of years when it was first settled and then, purchased in Louisiana Purchase all the way through to, the last 50 plus years of the current music culture. So I think there's really some great stories to be told and preserved here in New Orleans. So I'm hoping that, we can use the geography to our advantage and get some of these great people into our studio to preserve their story and share that with the world. So that's something that's on my radar, and hopefully some way, shape, or form we can manifest that here in 2025.
Yeah, very, very cool. I think we will. I like that. Ghafoor, I like your ideas too. Even if we can't get everyone in the studio at the same time, maybe we can ask them about the same story or the same question, right? I remember with my mom's podcast, we asked a question around, is there something that you remember differently than your siblings? And because they have talked about it and she has multiple siblings, there were memories that she pulled out where she's like, well, for me, it was this, but for them, they remember it differently. And it's just that different experience and perspective, right? And I think for you, Ghafoor, if we do it separately, I bet you they're all going to want to run in the studio after they hear everybody else's answers to be like, no, that's not what happened, or I gotta like that'll motivate them.
Yeah, but I like that idea, Carrie, of hey, everyone gets the same question. And now we get to
let's hear the real answer.
Yeah, and they have no idea what their siblings have said. So yeah, that could be a cool kind of mini episode all in its own, 7 different answers to the same question.
I don't want to get too cheeky. Like, we have like Big Brother and these kind of like reality TV shows here in the UK. I'm sure you guys have actually in America, you guys have so many of them, but you could play snippets of what your sibling has said. And we could cleverly edit that and just show them apart. And that would cause serious drama, at least in my household anyway.
I could tell by Joe's expression. If you're not watching on YouTube, Joe does not approve. Joe does help to manage our brand, and I can tell in his head he's like, "That's not on brand."
Yeah, not on brand, but could be entertaining.
I tend to be responsible for R&D, so Ghafoor, we can test anything out.
Yeah. Testing's fine.
Yes. All right. Let me see. So if I were answering this question, I think we are going to have some community series coming out, which are going to be really cool. Probably a little different than what Ghafoor just described, but who knows? We'll test his idea out too and see how it goes. So I'm pretty excited about the idea of pulling community stories together. And the other thing that's been really awesome over the last probably 6 months is we've had a lot of people writing in, sometimes PR, but some companies, but sometimes individuals just saying, I published a book, or I've done XYZ. I'd love to be on the podcast. And I want those to keep coming. One of our goals was to have the most diverse stories that we can have. And part of my learnings, I didn't talk about the diversity of the stories, but part of my learnings are from listening to those, from having those conversations, are how many common threads are in all of those diverse stories and diverse experiences, right? How much the same many of those diverse people and experiences are. I think it's very cool, but we want to keep learning and hearing and honoring all of the traditions and experiences that people have. So we can't just keep it to our network. We can't just keep it to our marketing. We need you to reach out and get in touch with us. And I'd love to see that keep coming in. Yeah. So I know this group, we could keep talking. I'm going to cut us off because you may not want to keep listening. So as we wrap the New Year's show, I just want to throw it back to you because it matters to us. So everybody who's listening, what did you love and learn from the year, and what do you want to hear more of? We really, if you write to us, we will do our best to do it. So email us at admin@audiolife.io, or post your answers on our Instagram, our Facebook, our LinkedIn. You can do it under our videos on YouTube if you want. But we really do want to hear from you.
Yes.
So let us know what you want to hear.
Yeah, please stay in touch, all you listeners, and we look forward to growing our audience here in 2025.
Love you all.
Amazing.
Every one of you, every listener that comes in, every comment we get, we do painstakingly look at everything. And so just big thanks from everybody here.
Yeah, 100%. So it's been another episode of your AudioLife Memoirs podcast. I've been one of your hosts today, Carrie Purcell, and thrilled to be joined in the studio by my co-founders, our founding members, Joe Marckx and Ghafoor Masood. Thank you for being here with us today. And as always, don't forget to like and rate our show. You can subscribe so you never miss an episode. We are so excited to talk to you, listen to you, hear from you in 2025 going forward.
If you like what you heard today, consider recording your own AudioLife private podcast or giving one to a loved one for a unique and memorable gift. Today, AudioLife listeners will receive 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. Also, remember to rate our show and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.